the Surratt Brothers Podcast, a conversation about church, sports, current events, but mostly church. Today we talk with Michael Kel, the executive director of the Rooted Network, about discipleship in the home and in the church. We also talk about what food we would miss most if we're out of the country or on Ozempic. Are planes still safe with parts falling off? And how pastors can better deal with the natural post-Easter letdown. Now join me and my brother Geoff for the podcast. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. Again, my name is Chris and this is Geoff. And it goes without saying, our last name is Surratt since you are listening to this. But how are you doing, Geoff?
Hey, I'm doing good. We're in the midst of spring here in Colorado, and which means that we have had a snow of 20 inches and a snow of 10 inches so far just this month. So yeah, we're right in the teeth of spring. Getting ready for Easter. Easter.
I think we made it clear last time that Denver is not the place to live in the winter or spring.
It's a great place to live. Yeah, we're getting ready for Easter as we record this. Easter's coming up this Sunday. The church I'm at, we do 11 services over 3 locations. So yeah, getting ready for all of that.
Now, do you guys start like on Saturday, do like a Saturday 1 or 2 and then Sunday, or how does that work?
We're doing, with Easter falling on a Sunday this year.
You know what I mean?
I know. We're starting on Friday night. We do a Good Friday, but we actually do the exact same service on Friday that we do Saturday, Sunday. So we'll do 1 on Friday, and then our original location, we'll do 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and then 2 each at our other 2 locations.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit later. It's in the agenda, but yeah, we do a Good Friday service, at least here on Maui, but it's different from Sunday. So it's a different message. And then we do a bunch on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Let me ask you a question. We'll get into that. I know a little bit, but, so I've been on, you've been on staff for a long, long time. I've been on staff for a long, long time. Neither one of us are the guy who speaks on Sunday. Or they're kind of supporting doing all of that. This is going to sound really funny. You'll probably have a completely different answer, but I love Easter. Obviously, Easter is the center of our faith. The Easter weekend is one of my least favorite weekends of the year. Mm-hmm. And it's because of all of the services and getting there really early and having to tell my family, yeah, how do you feel about Easter lunch around 3-ish? And so everyone's like, oh, I so look forward to Easter. I do, but not the actual weekend. I mean, do you feel that way a little bit, or am I feel as saved as you?
Exactly that way. Now this year will be a little bit different because we're only doing 3 services on Sunday here on Maui. Although the first one is at 6 a.m. I still don't understand why people want to go to a sunrise service. I would not, but we do have a 6. So I'll have to get there like at 4:30 to get set up and all that stuff. So that's a bummer. But when I was on staff at my previous church, we had the same thing. We had, 5 locations. Each one of them had at least 3 services. Our main location, I think one year had 9 services, 10 services. And I had to be at all of them because I was one of the senior leadership and basically bounced from campus to campus. And, by the time you get home, you're right. It's like 3:00. I'm miserable. I'm tired. I don't want to do Easter lunch. I just want to go to sleep for a couple days. Now, do you guys get Monday off? Do they at least give you because that was always a nice perk.
Hey, the church I work for, their policies around stuff like that is amazing. So they actually close the offices on Monday and Tuesday after Easter. Something else they do, they're closed between Christmas and New Year's. They don't have church on the Sunday between Christmas and the first Sunday really the second Sunday of January. And here's something I'm not familiar with another church doing. They give the entire staff what they call a Sabbath week during the year. And it's a week that's not connected to those holidays where everything's closed, no office stuff going on, anything at all. And so they're kind of, the philosophy is they want the staff to be healthy. We come to Easter, we have 11 services that you're there for hours, tons of hours. And then we give that back to you. And so it's not a churn and burn church at all. Like, we have long-term staff members. I think a lot of churches could really look at some of that and go, why do we have to just burn, 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 burn. And this is a church, Chris, that's growing at a clip of 30 to 50% year over year, depending on which month it is.
Wow.
So it's a fast growing church, and yet they still have policies that are focused on health. That's
amazing. Yeah, I don't know of a lot of churches that, especially I've never heard of the Sabbath week. That's amazing. That's, but I do have a question. Can you really consider yourself a church and skip Sundays? I mean, you said
you mean like have Sundays that you don't have church?
That you don't have church. I mean, I don't even know if you can consider yourself a Christian church at that point, or are you more of just like
here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to let that one just lay there. I'm not addressing it at all. Hey, by the way, I do want to mention this. Chris is on social media. His name, Chris Surratt, is on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, TikTok, Truth Social. He's on all of them. And he would love to hear from you about whether or not a church that doesn't meet on a certain Sunday is a Christian church. So just be sure and hit him up on any of those channels.
Did you say Truth Social? Was that one of those?
I did.
That is funny. Yeah. TikTok is more possible. That's true. All right. So on a more uncontroversial topic, we're about to go home. I don't think I've mentioned that on this podcast. It's a little bit of an announcement.
Oh, wow.
Our church knows
done in
that.
Maui, huh?
We're done in Maui. We're leaving April 7th, right after church, headed back to Nashville, Tennessee. And, I love the food here on Maui. It's been amazing. In fact, I have added many pounds that I'm going to have to figure out, because it's hard to live on an island and not eat like you're on vacation every day. It's just, but one of the things that I have crave, well, two things actually, is barbecue. There's not any good, just Texas type barbecue here on island, and Mexican food. There's really just not anything. So our first stop, literally when we get back, we've already said, was we're going to our favorite Mexican food place in Nashville, and we're going to eat there. So my question for you is, when you're out of the country, you travel a lot, you go to Europe, you have private jets, things like that. But when you get back, what do you have to eat? What do you miss?
First of all, I ride in the back of ginormous planes with the chickens. I do not fly private jets. I don't fly business class. I don't even get to fly economy plus. I'm crammed in the back. Chris, we've never done what you've done. And I really envy you, like on Maui. Yeah. And just that opportunity to live in a community, and Hawaii is the U.S., but still a very different culture. In some ways, we've never done that. Like, we've traveled to, like you said, to Europe. We go to Mexico often for our anniversary trip that we take, but we've never done it for months at a time. And it's usually a short time. When we first traveled, I tell you what I missed the most, to be honest with you. You used to not be able to get ice in your drink. And so the rest of the world, I don't know why, but they liked warm drinks. So you'd ask for an ice cube and they'd bring you one. Like, I'm like, could I double up? And then, but they still, when you travel, for the most part, in America, you can get there's a big gulp at 7-Eleven, and now there's a super big gulp. And I don't know if you've seen this yet. They now have a double gulp. Have you seen that? It's a 64-ounce refillable fountain drink.
Nickel difference, though.
Nickel difference, lady. What would you do? Yeah.
Do.
You don't have that. You don't get that internationally. I mean, a big cup would be 20 ounces, and you don't refill it. Like if you ask for a refill, they look at you like, so I always miss that. Speaking of food, though, I got a question for you. Did you see, I just saw this morning. Did you see that McDonald's is now going to start selling Krispy Kreme donuts at every McDonald's in America?
I saw that. They advertised they're going to do 3, and a buddy of mine put on X, is 3 enough? It's just a joke that he did. But yes, I did see that. Yeah.
So my question is, are they just trying to kill us? Like, are they literally, like McDonald's? Do you remember that for a while they did salads, and they're like, hey, we're going healthy and we're giving you healthy options. They threw all those out and they said, you know what? We're just going to give you Krispy Kreme donuts. And so I read an article that said, now you can make your own donut burger, right? Like, I honestly think they're trying to kill us.
They are. Well, the adage, sex sells. In their industry, is sugar sells. Sugar is going to sell. Salads are not.
Don't get me wrong. Like the day they come to Colorado, I'm in the drive-thru for the Hot Now Krispy Kreme donuts at McDonald's and a side of fries. I mean, come on.
Oh. All right. So we're now through the first couple rounds actually of March Madness. We talked about on the last one, our brackets. You and I both have U of H as the winning team, and they scared us a little bit with the A&M game, but they're staying there. My bracket is pretty much a mess at this point. We both talked about how we've not watched any games. So I pretty much picked, the top seeds in almost every round. Cause by the time you get to the Final Four, it's like usually 2 1s and 2 2s or 3 1s and a 2. So I figured at least I'll get to the Final Four, but I'm at 6 of the potential Elite Eights in my bracket, which I think is not horrible for not knowing anything. What about you? Where are you at?
I'm same. I have 6 teams left. And if those 6 teams all hit, I'm in great shape. U of H, if they had lost the other night, I just would have quit watching the tournament because it would be over for me. But as long as U of H wins, you know how these things go early on in the brackets, in the pools, people, they go way to the top. Like, oh, I'm beating everybody, I'm killing everybody. It makes no difference because every round you get more points, and it's just being alive for the Elite Eight. Then you find out who's going to win. So my bracket's not good. I'm with you. I really picked this year on what traditionally colleges were good. And then I picked I picked College of Charleston to go a couple rounds. And I don't know why. Did you see that the CFC coach just left and went to Louisville?
Yeah. And took all his players with him.
Yeah.
Don't you love the new transfer rules where you can just leave whenever you want?
Exactly. Our brother that we won't name because he's not here today, but he was whining and crying because of that. I'm like, dude, would you coach College of Charleston or would you take the Louisville job? I'm taking the Louisville job, right?
Louisville job. Yeah. Every time. I don't think we talked about this last time. Did you do multiple brackets? I think our oldest brother did. I do one bracket. It's a bracket of integrity, and I just stick with that. Is that what you do?
Yeah. It's just multiple bracket garbage. Like
it's garbage.
What are you doing? Oh, I'm just going to guess a bunch of things. I assume when you go vote for the president, you just, multiple ballots. Oh, wait, we can't talk about that. We're back to Truth Social and controversy, right?
It's option C, all of the above. Yeah. No,
we don't do speaking of that, I'm starting my own social media network. I don't know if I told you that.
No. What's it going to be called? Oh,
I don't know yet, but I saw that Truth Social just went public for right at a valuation of $8 billion. So yeah, I'm going to start my own.
And I saw somebody said they made like 3 to 4 million last year or something like that, but now it's worth $8 billion. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, before you move off basketball, in case you are moving off, I don't know where you're going. I was. First time in my life, I am way more interested in the Iowa-Colorado women's game coming up this weekend than I am any game in the men's bracket. Like I watched all of the Iowa-West Virginia game, and man, that was fun. And Colorado, I haven't followed them at all, but they're pretty good. And Caitlin Clark, she's the best thing out there, and she has less support than any player I've ever seen. My son texted me, he said it's like watching the best player in basketball and 4 random women they found on campus. Like it was crazy. I'm excited about that. That's fun to watch.
Yeah, no, that is cool. I'm hoping that it comes down to, and actually I'd have to look at the bracket because I don't even know if this is possible, but the championship game being Iowa and South Carolina. They may meet before that. I haven't looked at how the bracket's laid out.
Yeah, my son was telling me what was possible, not possible. I think LSU, Iowa's not possible because, that was last year. It would be a rematch. But that's what I want is I either want Iowa, South Carolina, or I want LSU, South Carolina, because another riot would be amazing. Like they just duking it out at midcourt. Yeah. Sorry, that's just
South Carolina girls. My daughter graduated from South Carolina, so we're more interested in them. But they're a team. Like Iowa is Caitlin Clark. They're a team. So we'll see what happens. So moving off basketball, you and I both travel a lot. We fly on planes a lot. Have you been watching what's happening with Boeing lately.
Things falling off.
I saw a meme this morning that said, when one door closes, another door opens, signed Boeing.
I listened to a really geeky show on a radio station that we won't mention, but it has the letters N, P, and R in the name. And they have a category of, did anything fall off of a Boeing plane this week? And then this week's category was, did any flight attendants accidentally press the button that makes the plane plunge 1,000 feet this week? And the answer was yes. A flight attendant somehow is in the cockpit and hits the button.
That makes the chair go up.
Makes the chair go up, crushes the pilot against the whatever the steering wheel is, and it plunges 1,000 feet. We got to work on that.
I don't know if you've looked into that, but it's almost impossible to hit that button. Like there's a little knob or door thing that goes over. It has to be flipped up. It has to be. So she was really digging into the seat to make this happen. But so with all of it, and a wheel fell off of a United flight the other day, like right as soon as it took off. I don't know if you saw
Hawaii,
that.
wasn't it? Where it fell off?
It may have been. Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think back to the seat thing. You know, the Boeing guys are going, you got to be kidding me. Like, what else do we do? Put a combination lock on there? What are we going to do?
Right. So with all of this, just parts falling off randomly, does it make you nervous? Like I'm flying United home on the 7th. It doesn't me because I fly enough and there's still, the record of it and all that. But it does make me look around on a plane a little closer when I get on it. Like what pieces feel like they might fly off at any point. Does it bother you at all?
It doesn't bother me at all. Not one bit. Not one bit. I was in.
So you don't care.
I don't care. I'm going to go see Jesus eventually. And at my age, it's probably sooner rather than later. I might as well, take it.
You're running out the clock at this point. Yeah.
We both have many, many stories where we thought we were going to die. I was on a flight from Atlanta to Charleston, and it wasn't a Boeing. It was an old, do you remember the MD-80s, the McDonnell Douglas planes? And as we're taxiing, we heard a loud boom, and then the plane starts like bouncing like it's a flat tire. And so we knew, it blew out a tire. Well, I'm thinking it's like NASCAR. They're going to come out with a little truck and they're going to jack the plane up and pull the tire up with the new one on. And I'm thinking, I said to the guy next to me, I said, oh man, I hope this doesn't take long changing this tire. I don't want to, I want to get home. Well, it didn't take long because they didn't change the tire. And the pilot takes off. And as he takes off, the plane feels like everything's going to fall apart. And as we're climbing, you could literally smell smoke in the cabin. And it was the smell of, I don't know, burning rubber as a tire is spinning around a hub at 120 miles an hour. Like we knew what it was. So people are like calling the flight attendants. So the captain comes out. He says, I understand some folks that, you smell a little smoke back there. That's normal whenever an MD-80 takes off. No, it wasn't. It was never normal. So this is as we're landing, we're getting ready to land, and the guy next to me, he's losing it. He's sweating, and he turns to me, and I'm not a good person. He turns to me and he says, "Do you think this thing can land with a flat tire?" And I said, "We're about to find out." So we landed. I'm not brave. I just, when I'm in a plane, it's out of my hands. If a door falls off, it falls off. How about you? So scary.
Well, you and I were the scaredest I've been on a plane was you and I flying into Houston in the middle of a tropical storm. And I honestly thought, this is it. We're dying. It's going down. Hey,
do you remember who knew a plane could land sideways? Do you remember that?
I know.
It was coming into the runway sideways because the wind was so bad.
That was so scary. So scary.
It was embarrassing when you got out and kissed the ground, though. That was just a little embarrassing.
Yeah, and the captain. I did kiss the captain.
Yeah, that's true.
It's even more embarrassing. But there's a book. I don't know if you've read it. It's called Checklist Manifesto. And I love the book. I took actually my staff here in Maui through it. And the premise of the book is that you need checklists for things that are important. So you know that things are getting done right. And one of the main examples they use is, before, like the 70s, 80s, probably planes used to go down on a fairly regular basis. Like it was a pretty normal thing for one to go and kill some people. And then at a point in history, it pretty much stopped and planes became very, very safe. And you occasionally get one, but it's not very often. And a big reason why is they implemented a checklist system, just like doctors have used in operating rooms. And basically they run through this checklist of this works, this works, this works. And a captain has a huge checklist and mechanics have a checklist. I just think that it's been so safe for so long. They don't do the checklist anymore. They're just like, it looks good. We don't need those bolts. Just fly.
You're probably right. I always wonder when, the captain has to walk around outside the plane before it takes off to check everything. I always wonder, does he really know what he's looking at? Like if he saw a turbine that needed to be tightened up a little bit, would he even recognize that? Or is that just a quick jog around so he can check it off his checklist and keep going?
Yeah. And what scares me is I have a friend who's a pilot. And one time I saw him do a selfie while he was doing it.
Oh,
and I'm like, if you're paying attention to your selfie, what are you missing? Yeah. Anyways.
Sherry used to be terrified of flying. And so she was talking to one of our friends who's a pilot. And she said, the scariest thing for me is landing. She said, every time we start to land, I just have to close my eyes. And he said, me too.
Me too. All right, moving on. Crazy headline of the week. You called it a dumb headline, but for this one, it's more just one of those that makes you go, headline of the week. Ozempic. Have you been following this? Do you know Ozempic and Wegovy? Those?
Yeah, no, I have some good friends that are using some forms of that. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's a weight loss thing where you take a shot every day in your stomach, which rules me out right from the beginning. I'm not going to do that.
It's once a week, just to clarify.
Whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm not doing it. But Ozempic babies are surprising women taking weight loss drugs. So since this thing became a big deal with Oprah and celebrities, people are now doing Ozempic, which is great. If I didn't have to do a shot, I might do it. But they discovered one of the side effects is women are now having babies.
Wait, so I'm so confused. So I haven't seen this article. So Ozempic makes them pregnant is what happens? Is this like a new,
there's science behind it.
There's some sort of starfish that now is pregnant and it's never been around another starfish. So is that what you're talking about?
Probably not, but no, these are women who thought they were maybe done. Gotcha. Even a few of them, using contraception and all that, but it's somehow they got an Ozempic babies is what they're calling it. So it just made me think, not that either one of us have to worry about that, but is there any type of side effect that would come along with something like this where you could lose, weight without mainly, really changing anything? You're not exercising more. You're not changing your diet, although I think that's how Ozempic works, is it makes you hate food or something. But is there anything that you would be okay with? And you say, yeah, it's worth the risk.
Full confession. I'm thinking about it. Like I actually am thinking about it. As I've gotten past 60, losing weight has become like almost impossible. And I've lost weight all my life off and on. And I thought about that. What side effect, as long as I don't lose my hair? Because, I don't know if you could imagine losing your hair. Like that would be horrible. That would just be a horrible thing. You'd have to walk around with a hat on all the time. And, dude, hey, that was insensitive, wasn't it? That was a little insensitive. I'm sorry.
What's even worse is when you lose your hair and you get fat.
Yeah.
Those two things.
Yeah. That doesn't sound good at all.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just
that was a really jerky thing to do, but, all right. So moving on. Now, is there anything that, like, I was thinking about this and I was like, okay, if I could lose weight, take a pill, not shoot myself in the stomach once a week, apparently, I would take like a trimmer somewhere, like a finger that trembles or, maybe I don't know. There's some things that I would live with for that.
That's really dark. Like, can we go back to the Krispy Kreme donuts? Like, I like that better. Can I take Ozempic and eat Krispy Kreme donuts? That's the question I've got. Are you still hungry for Krispy Kreme even though you lost your appetite?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the point is you don't want food, and I don't want that. That's the side effect I don't want. I
there
like
you go.
Food too much.
If I don't want Mexican food, I don't want to do that. That could be. Yeah. Now I'm thinking, I'm reflecting. Maybe that's why I'm struggling losing weight. Could be the Mexican food.
Could be the Mexican food. All right. So this is Holy Week. We talked about, we've got Easter coming up this Sunday, because it is on Sundays every single year, although a different Sunday, which I know how it works. I know it's tied to the calendar. That doesn't make any sense. I wish they would say it's April 17th or whatever that Sunday is every year, the second Sunday, whatever. But it is this Sunday, and you guys are doing 11 services this weekend. You know, we're doing a bunch at Harvest. But I was thinking about it's Holy Week. There are some of those that we never really talk about. You know, I think most people know about Maundy Thursday, which is kind of remembering the Last Supper. So you have a supper together. I like that one a lot. There's Good Friday, that, you know, some churches do a different service. We're doing a special Good Friday, just to remember the night that Jesus died. But there's some other ones. This is one I looked up. I didn't know about. Do you know what Wednesday is?
I don't. I have no idea.
It's Holy Wednesday, but it's also known as Spy Wednesday.
Spy Wednesday.
Yep. This is a real thing. It's the day that Judas, sold out and got the pieces of silver to turn in Jesus. So it's known as that because he became a spy in the midst of the disciples, told the Pharisees where to go find him. So I thought that was fascinating. I don't know how you celebrate that.
No, that is interesting. Hey, I put this in the newsletter, speaking of Judas and selling Jesus out. Do you know, and by the way, we connected to the podcast, sort of, we have a newsletter every week now that comes out on Mondays. And one of the things I learned, do you know what 30 pieces of silver would be worth on today's market?
I don't.
It's like $380. I looked it up. It's about the price of an Apple Watch. And I thought, to me, that clicked in my head that Judas sold Jesus out for the equivalent of an Apple Watch. And that kind of drove it home to me. I always thought 300 pieces or 30 pieces silver, ton of money. It wasn't a lot of money back then. It's not a lot of money now. So yeah, Spy Wednesday. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. Actually, what I want to talk about here is, we talked about how depressed we are basically after Easter, staff. And I can't even imagine being the main speaker. Like you said, you and I have not done that, but they tend to do most of them live. There's a lot that goes into speaking. But one of the big letdowns is the Sunday after Easter, because you've had this huge deal. You've built up for it for months, probably had multiple meetings, special music, everything that goes into Easter, which should happen. But then it's the next Sunday and you've got your normal crowd, probably less than your normal, because not everybody comes the week after Easter. You don't have the big production. It's the regular deal. And it's always a letdown and just really depressing, especially for lead pastors. And I know you've talked about this before and written about it, but what are some advice that you would give pastors for that next Sunday? How can they overcome that or, go at it with a healthy attitude?
Yeah. And, we want to recognize, like, churches are all over this spectrum. Like, some churches don't have a huge attendance on Easter. It's the same attendance or maybe a little bit more. Some have monstrous attendance on Easter. One of the things I try to encourage pastors with is try not to get too tied up in that Easter Sunday number. Like, it absolutely is fun when there's a big crowd and it's, parking lot's full, and there's no doubt about that. No doubt at all. But I also remind myself, if you brought in flying monkeys on a Sunday, you would have a huge crowd. If you gave away, $500 gift cards to everybody, you'd have a huge crowd. And I'm not against huge crowds, but sometimes we get so excited about, wow, we had so many hundreds or thousands, and that's a good thing. But when we live and die by that high number, then we live and die by that low number. And there is something to be said for, hey, when it's whether it's Easter or a regular weekend, a lot of people come to say, hey, that's great. That's fantastic. I don't get my value from how many people sit in a chair and listen to me speak on a weekend. That's the central thing. Where do you get your value? And for some, to be honest with you, pastors, if after Easter, either you're walking on clouds because of the number, or you're in the, value because of the number, step back and go, wait, where am I getting my value? You may be getting it from the numbers. And then the next week, a fewer number of people come. I get it. Here's what I try to do is I try to remind myself the people that are supposed to be there are there. The people that Jesus has helped bring into that crowd, that is who is there. And there's one person there. Maybe there's two people there that God wants me as a pastor to speak to, and they're there. And so, there's not the 200 that we had last week, or the 2,000 or the 20,000 or whatever number it was. But the people that are here need to hear the gospel, need to hear it presented through how God has wired me up. And I think one of the biggest things, Chris, is just loving the ones, like I'm saying, loving the ones you're with, loving the people that are there, loving the people that are part of your church. Did you ever experience way back in the olden days when our dad, there'd be a bad crowd for a Sunday night? We had Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. There'd be a bad crowd on a Sunday night, and he'd get real upset. And sometimes he would kind of yell at the people that were there because he was upset with the people that weren't there. Did you ever experience that?
Oh yeah. Multiple.
Yeah. And I get it. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, don't be upset with the people that are there because of the people that aren't, and don't be upset with the people that aren't. Like they're not bad people. Like in Colorado, the week after Easter, it's one of the last great weekends to ski. Like, are they bad people if they ski on that weekend? Perhaps, but perhaps not. What do you think?
No, that's good. All of that. Couple things I would say. When I was a campus pastor, we were separated from the main campus. So I really felt some of that burden on Easter more than probably just staff members do, because, we wanted big numbers and all of that. And we would on Easter. But then the first thing I would do is I would get home on Sunday, flip open Facebook at the time or Twitter, and see people, other pastors. We had 100,000 on Sunday for Easter. I mean, that's exaggerating, but in some pastors that were in my ballpark, they had much more than we did. And it would just deflate me. It would be like, they had so many. So my suggestion would be, don't get on social media for a couple days.
Nope.
Let it rest, get excited, celebrate with your staff, but don't compare yourself. And you want to say, I want to get on there and celebrate everybody else.
No, you don't.
Yeah. But you're not going to be there. You're not there yet. So
hey, can we make a pact? Can we make a pact with our listeners? What if all of us said, whatever church we're connected with, whatever influence we have, we're not going to post numbers on social media? Like, we're going to celebrate as a staff. We can talk to our church, whatever we want to do. But you know what? On social media this year, we're just not going to post numbers.
That'd be great. And then the second thing I would say is more of a practical thing, is consider on Easter Sunday giving them a reason why to come back the next week. You're not going to get the Easter numbers. You're going to, but launch a new series the next week. Make it very practical, something that they want to come back for. And, this would help my life if I came back for this series on parenting or, godly financing, whatever it is, but give them a reason to come back the next week at your service. They're not all going to come back, but at least use that big crowd to say, hey, there's a reason why you should be coming back.
Yeah. Hey, there's one more practical tip that I've seen some pastors do. They don't speak the weekend after Easter. And the guy who's up is excited, like it's his chance to speak, and it's great. And then the pastor doesn't deal with some of that kind of stuff. So that's just a practical thing. Some pastors would say, your church will never grow if you don't speak the week after Easter.
No.
I think it'll be okay. I think we're all going to be okay.
You'll be okay. Exactly. All right. So we should get to our guest. I'm super excited about this guy, MIchael Kel. He is the executive director of the Rooted Network, and we'll talk about Rooted a little bit. They're also a sponsor of this podcast, which is really cool. He's the former senior vice president at Lifeway. He was there for over 15 years. And little thing, he was my boss for 6 of those years. And we might we might talk to Michael a little bit about that.
Yeah,
I'm sure
I have questions. I have questions.
Sure, he loved me as an employee, but he's a great dude. He's a pastor, author of a lot of books. A few of them are The Whole Story for the Whole Family, a year of Jesus-centered family devotions, and he's very passionate about that. And we'll talk to him about that a little bit. Growing Down, Unlearning the Patterns of Adulthood That Keep Us from Jesus, and Transformational Discipleship, How People Really Grow. And actually that book has become, at least in the Lifeway SBC world, almost a Bible for discipleship. So this guy is a big deal. He's also a Texan. We'll talk to him a little bit about that, but let's get to our interview with Michael Kelly. All right. Well, Michael Kelly, thanks so much for being on the Surratt Brothers podcast.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you for the invitation.
It's been a while. Michael and I worked together for several years at Lifeway, and hopefully it was a great experience on my end. I don't know about Michael. We might ask him some more about that.
So Michael, we don't know each other well. We just met, but I do. Major question up top: how bad of an employee was Chris? And it's just us. It's just us talking. It's just friends, right? You're my new best friend. How bad was Chris as an employee?
Chris, he was a great employee. I mean,
come on.
Here's the major trouble that we had with Chris. Even though we had sort of a relaxed dress code, I couldn't, there was never a day when Surratt did not show up wearing a ball cap. It was always ball cap. And what you want to say is, man, we get it. A lot of us suffer from male pattern baldness. It's fine. Just take it all. It's fine. It's totally fine.
What he didn't mention is he is not one of those who suffers from male pattern baldness, like my brother Geoff.
Michael, that's better. We had problems when we worked together. Chris took Casual Friday to a level I don't even want to explain, but it was, let's just say it was not good.
None of this is true. All right, let's get on some more important things. First of all, what's your bracket look like? Where are you at? You feeling good?
I'm actually feeling pretty good. So I wasn't feeling good the other night because I have Houston to win the thing.
Oh, and you do too.
When they went down to the wire with A&M, I was questioning my picks. But truthfully, all of my Elite Eight are still in play. So I've got all of my Elite Eight teams. And I think if you got that, you got to feel good about where you're at right now.
That's really good. Yeah. I think we talked about early in the podcast, but I've got 6 of 8. So 8 of 8. That game gave me a little bit of heart palpitations too. I pulled for Houston. I'm assuming you're a Texan, so you got to pull for a Texas team, and that's the good one this year. But that scared me to death. I just did not like that ending.
It was crazy. So exciting. I maintain. Now, guys, bear in mind, I have not watched a single college basketball game this year before the tournament. Not a single one. So the only reason that I picked Grand Canyon and I picked James Madison in the upset, but that's only because over the years, I've just made the convictional decision that I'm going to pick at least 2 12s in that round. Because the 12-5 there's always something that happens in the 12-5 matchup.
One year I took, I did same thing. We talked earlier, Michael, I think an earlier podcast, none of us watched any basketball this year. So we feel very, very much experts. One year I took the Christians. So every matchup, if it was like a Saint something or like Grand Canyon's a Christian based organization, Liberty, I took the Christians. I got crushed. Like the Lions destroyed the Christians.
That would be a good, I'm rolling through my mind about what you would name that bracket, Greg. Would it be the Holy Rollers? It could be,
That's it. It's the Holy Rollers. That's right.
There's a number of ways it could go. I like that, folks.
One more really important question that Geoff and I discussed earlier is, now as a Texan, what I talked about is I've been on Maui for the last 6 months, and my first stop.
Really? Because you haven't.
I never mentioned that. I know.
Being on Maui.
But my first stop when I get home is a Mexican food place because it's just it doesn't exist here. So as a Texan, when you get back to Texas, I know you go a few times a year. What are you craving? Where do you go first that Nashville just doesn't do for you?
Well, you hit it. It's Mexican food. Now, Nashville, is a great food city, but by and large, the Mexican food in Nashville is abysmal. So, like for spring break, my wife is from New Mexico, and so we went to the mountains in New Mexico and went skiing for spring break. And man, we based all of our eating decisions about whether or not there was something that involved green chili on the menu. Greg, you get that in Denver. Denver's big green chili country too. You guys do that out there.
Actually, we lived, Michael, in Houston for 14 years, and Colorado just doesn't know Tex-Mex at all. Barely knows Mexican food. We don't really get the New Mexico green chili much. A little bit hatch chilies, a little bit, but no, I'm with you. When I'm in Texas, it's Mexican food, whatever form it wants to take.
Yep, all the time.
And this is you said Greg, which we all get, but that's actually Geoff on this one.
Oh my gosh, I'm very embarrassed.
No, Greg is usually on here. We did not allow him to be on this episode. You were too important.
Chris, you could have let it go. I was feeling so important. I was feeling like a big deal. Michael was thinking, I'm talking to the Greg Surratt. Now he's like, nope. I don't even know who this one is. I've never heard of him.
Exactly.
Sorry, Greg, man. I'm the middle one.
We'll fix it in post, right, guys? That's what we say about it.
I'll get you to say Geoff a couple times at the end of this, and I'll drop it.
Like we edit this mess. Yeah, we'll fix it in post.
All right, let's get serious for a minute. Now, when I was at Lifeway, actually, before I was at Lifeway, your title was something discipleship, right? What was it exactly?
Yeah, back in the old days. Yeah, the director of discipleship.
Director of discipleship. That's right. And that's really a passion of yours. And even when your title changed and you became a big guy that didn't talk to us little guys, you still were very passionate about discipleship. And you and I wrote a little book together about discipleship. And so that's what we want to talk about today. And what I want to start with is, why do you think we as church leaders, and I include myself, tend to make the process of discipleship so hard and complicated? And I think a lot of pastors are afraid of digging deep on it because they don't know where to start. So why do we make it so complicated?
I think there's a number of answers for that question. There's probably a best case scenario and a worst case scenario answer to the question. So best case scenario is that we tend to make it complicated because we just want to make sure that it happens. And it feels like with a lot of things in life, if you can put all kinds of checkpoints around it, you're trying your best to ensure that the process is actually running smoothly. That's the best case scenario. I feel like the worst case scenario is one of two things. One is that we do it as a means of self-justification. So we need to wrap some complication around this to justify ourselves as an expert in this field, because not everybody can think this way and do it this way. And then the other worst case scenario is that we take a little bit of the mystery out of what discipleship is. And that's, I'm trying not to use that word too lightly, but it is mysterious in a sense, because what we're really talking about is a deep-seated, lasting change that happens inside of a person. That's a super mysterious process that cannot be wrought by human hands or systems. And especially if you are sort of more analytically bent, you would like to have a more quantifiable process than the mysterious process of what discipleship is, which is really cooperative work with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. You're dead on with all of that, but especially the analytical. I mean, you and I are similar. We're both analytical type personalities. And I get lost in that sometimes. I get lost in just, quantifiable things that we need to see. And I know at Lifeway we had the signposts and all of that, but you can just get lost in that. But, and you talk about this a lot too, and I think you've written some books on this. Really, discipleship has to start in the home before you can even really bring it as a pastor to the church. Is that true? And how do we do that?
I think again, best case scenario, it is true, especially when you're dealing with kids. Now, I think it's hard to make a definite pronouncement. It must start in the home, just because home environments are what they are, and the Lord is going to do what he is going to do. But an ideal scenario, especially when you think about families, I think, is a cooperative spirit between the local church and the home. And I think that the best kind of youth pastor, children's pastor, that they recognize, man, the mandate for discipleship ideally really lands on parents for their children. And so it just changes the question that you ask in a ministry. It's not only, well, how do we disciple these kids? It is, how do we help parents create an environment of discipleship inside of their homes, so that these things can happen. I also think in the home, it can be a much more organic than programmed process. Like the classic passage about discipleship in the home is Deuteronomy chapter 6. You guys, of course, know this passage. It's talk about these things with your kids, put them on your doorposts, talk about them when you come in and when you go out. There's a lot of organic, natural stuff in that passage. Like it doesn't say have a 30-minute family devotion time. Not that that's wrong, but what it talks about, what I believe that means is that a family should be so conversant in the things of God that spiritual conversations become normalized. Like it's not an abnormal thing for a father to go to his kids and say, what can I pray for you about today? That's just part of the family vernacular, that it just happens. This is the way that we do things.
I love that, Michael. Chris and I grew up in a home where you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of formal devotions where we sat down around the dinner table and we worked our way through Leviticus, and it just was not the norm. And yet we saw in our parents, both our dad, a pastor, but also our mom, just living out what it means to follow Christ day to day. So, and again, I agree with you. If people do sit around the table and do devotions together, that's fantastic. But I love what you're saying. It's more on the road. Somebody said it's like drive time and meal time and bedtime, and that's when you're just kind of reinforcing it.
Another way to think about it, Geoff, might be that those formalized times, like that devotion time, what you're trying to do there is sort of set the table for the informal times. Like we are priming the pump so that when those holy moments come on the drive time or on the walk or whatever it is, that you've already given your children language to wrap around what's happening, what the Lord is doing what he's doing in their lives.
That's good. I want to ask you this. So a pastor looks at his congregation. Maybe he's listening to this conversation. He's like, man, we're not doing a good job at this. We're not even, we don't even have anything in place to create disciples. We're not creating generations of disciples. It's just not non-existent. So what kind of advice would you give that pastor? Where does he start? What is step one? Maybe what's something that he can do to start creating those generations or helping create those generations of disciples within his congregation?
I think two things that I would suggest here. The first one is to remember the power of the Holy Spirit in illuminating the Word of God. So if a pastor came and said, man, I only have the bandwidth to do one thing. I can only get my people to do one single thing. I think the best counsel that we can give that pastor is, over and above anything else, if you can only get your people to do one single thing, get them to read the Bible for themselves on a daily basis and trust, because it has always been this way. Trust that if someone opens up God's word with a genuine heart, then their life is going to get changed. It is going to get changed. So I think that's the first thing is, whatever you're doing, wrap it around the question of, how do I get people to open their Bibles for themselves? That would be the first thing. And then the second thing that I would do is the second piece of counsel that I would give to a pastor is to say, brother, the kingdom of God starts like a mustard seed, but it grows to be the size of a tree in which birds and everything else roosts. So it is with discipleship in your church. So who are the 2 to 3 people that you can meet with on a weekly basis, and you can read the Bible together with them? And then you start setting the expectation for that to grow in both formal and informal ways to other people in the congregation. So it's going to take time, but it really can start with just a simple thing of, I'm going to gather 3 people together. And on Friday mornings at 6 a.m., we're going to read the book of Ephesians together, and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to watch how their lives change, and other people will see it, and it'll grow. It's back to, I think the question you asked first, Chris, was really, really insightful. Here too is, we just have the tendency to overcomplicate this. So let's just pare it back down. Let's think simply. Let's think achievably. What can we realistically do? And those are 2 things that we can realistically do.
That's great. I get questions every once in a while from churches like, how do I start small groups at my church? We don't have small groups. And my answer is always, start one. Start that first small group, lead that group, make it your deacons or your elders, whatever it is, but start that small group. Don't start 10 small groups, 20 small groups. Start one, do it for a season, and then start 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah.
That's a good word, man. That's so encouraging. That's good counsel. Good counsel.
So you are the executive director of the Rooted Network, which we are about to launch at my church at Harvest this fall. Just had a meeting right before this on that, and super excited about that. Tell us, how can Rooted help? Like, let's say you're at the point where you've got small groups, and you want to do something more kind of church wide. How can Rooted come alongside a church to help create disciples?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Rooted, the core Rooted experience is a 10-week experience that helps people get oriented around the true practice of what discipleship is. So it's a great way, for what you said, for people, regardless of how long they've been a Christian, to just sort of step back and move from the kind of thinking where we're sometimes tempted to think that discipleship is purely an educational process. Rooted is again a 10-week experience in which people come to understand that discipleship is disciplined, but it's also experiential and rhythmic in nature. So if a church has been doing groups for a long time, Rooted is a great way to just do a master reset. We're going to do a master reset. And then beyond that, it's a great tool for people entering the church, whether they're Christians or not. So it gives a pastor the ability to say, man, thank you. We're so glad that you're at our church. If you want to become more involved in the church, the first thing that you need to do is get involved with Rooted. What that's going to do is introduce you to our methodology for the way that we treat discipleship here. And it's also going to be an entrance point for you into other groups that we have in our church. Through the Rooted experience, people are going to come to understand what it means to be a Christian, how we treat the Bible as Christians. They'll come to understand the importance of serving, not just in the church, but in the community. They'll understand the importance of generosity. These are all key discipleship rhythms that will get integrated into people's lives through that 10-week experience.
Michael, I've heard about Rooted for years, participated in it to some extent. Actually first heard about it through Mariners and then through so many churches being a part of it. And I want to ask a question, and I'm asking this in a positive way, because I'm sure this is a question you guys address all the time. But early days of Rooted, some leaders would say, we loved it. We went through it. We struggled with what's next. So we did our group for 10 weeks, our groups for 10 weeks. And then how do you guys address that? What's next once we've completed Rooted?
Yeah. So we generally address it in the context of the church. One of the things that's been real exciting in the last 2 years is that alongside that core Rooted experience, we've also produced other lines of resources that are built on the same discipleship philosophy of Rooted. So what we can now say to a church is, depending on where your people are, you may want the next step for them to be in one of the studies in our deep dive series. These are more theologically oriented. And so we have a study about the story of God, which is the entire storyline of Scripture. We have another study about theology and the mission of God. So that might be something that you would want to do. We are building out a series of resources under a brand name called Cultivate, which is more about group life and helping people come together. So inside of that Rooted ecosystem, if you resonate with the philosophy behind Rooted, there are a number of different ways that you can go depending on where you sense your people are in terms of their needs.
That's great. And the way we're using it this fall is we're actually doing it as an all church. And that means all of our groups are going through Rooted at the same time. And we're going to be doing messages on Sundays that go along with the topic for that week. So it's going to be all the way through. I think our students are even going to do the student Rooted version. So we're bought in. I'm excited about what it's going to do for our church.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Man, we're so thankful for that and are excited to see what the Lord does with this. I mean, one of the beautiful parts of that Rooted experience is that after that 10-week experience, what we urge a church to have a Rooted celebration. And it's in that celebration where people are able to articulate, these are some specific ways that the Lord has really changed my life through that. It's such an encouraging, uplifting, momentum building kind of time. And so, man, I'm excited. I'm excited for you guys to experience that. It'll be beautiful.
We are too. So
I have just a brilliant idea right here, Michael. Rooted celebration, root beer floats. I'm just saying, you heard it here first.
Man, we're just setting them up and knocking them down. That's like holy rollers level.
There we go.
Hey, so if somebody wants to check out Rooted, where do they go? What's the website?
Yep. experiencerooted.com.
Sweet. And you can get a free sample. If you want to, and you send an email, it'll go to a friend of ours named Brandon. And I encourage you to continue emailing him probably every 30 minutes, just so he really gets the email. And I'll put his cell number in the show notes so you can call him over and over.
I wish you would. I wish you would do that.
Well, thanks, Michael. It's been great to catch back up with you. And I hopefully I was a better impression as an employee than just the dude that wears a hat. But I will say this one thing about Michael. And this is when I worked closely with Michael before he became a big deal at Lifeway. There were a few meetings where I'll just say we messed up, and Michael had every right to yell at us and scream at us. And he did not. All I remember was him getting really red and saying, guys, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again? That's as mad as I heard Michael. Now, Geoff as a boss threw a laptop one time at us, I think. A little bit different.
Oh,
I never threw a laptop. There's a reason he wears a hat. His head is just flat on top. There's nothing happening up top there.
This is a story for another podcast, guys. I'm inviting myself back on to hear this story.
It's a true story
of the laptop that's thrown.
It's a true story. It was a phone, not a laptop, and it was well before we worked together. And we're not getting into it today. Hey, Michael, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks. I want to talk about one of our sponsors, and that's Intentional Reach. And they could be your partner in turning audio and video sermons into top-notch transcripts. And they specialize in sermon transcription, podcasts, conferences, interviews, webinars. If it's spoken, they transcribe it. And these transcripts can boost your online reach up to threefold. Search engines love text, and transcripts make your content more searchable. Plus, at about $400 a month, it's a cost-effective way to expand your audience. And they're not just for websites. They can be repurposed for newsletters, blogs, social media, and more. So check it out. Go to intentionalreach.com and hit Get Your Transcripts today. All right. That was great. Michael is just a fountain of wisdom, especially when it comes to discipleship. But my favorite part, honestly, Geoff, of that entire interview was the fact that he referred to you as our other brother for a good 10 minutes of it. And I was going to let it go, but then I stopped it. But that made me really happy. How'd you feel about that?
Hey, well, I'm glad that you're happy. Have I ever told you that the rest of the family doesn't like you? I thought now would be a good time to bring up that no one really likes you in the family. I'm just saying.
Well, since you're the middle child, I guess you're allowed to say that. You're allowed to say that.
I don't know. Yeah, no, it didn't hurt my feelings at all that Michael called me Greg. I honestly probably am called Greg 30 to 40% of the time. And I just answer to it now.
It's honestly the same with me. And I don't even have a G at the beginning of my name, but I get called Greg. Never Geoff. I don't know what that means.
Not surprised. I have people call me Greg that have no idea I have a brother named Greg. It's just bizarre. That is the only other name I'm ever mistaken for. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it's 30% of the time people call me Greg. So it kind of hurts that Sherry calls me Greg, but no, she doesn't.
Well, when your name is Geoff, Greg is probably a little bit of an upgrade. Okay,
Andrea, is that where we're going?
All right, thanks for joining us. It's been fun for us. Hopefully it's been fun for you. Check us out on any podcast platform that you use. And the best thing to do is subscribe, because that way it shows up in your feed every single week. You don't have to look for us. Also, give us a rating, because that helps other people actually know about the podcast. Also, we've got links in our show notes you can go to just theratbrothers.com to all of the sponsors that we talk about and different things that we put in the episode. I don't know why I couldn't say episode, but in the episode. And then, we'd love to connect with you. We're on Twitter, or X as you call it now, Instagram, Facebook. Geoff is on Truth Social. So anywhere that you want to connect with us, please do that. And I guess, Geoff, I'll see you in a couple weeks, because we don't have one next week. But
yeah, it looks like we're going to miss next week. So yeah, have fun. I think you're headed to the big. No, you're headed to Hawaii, to the Oahu.
Yeah.
Sorry, I said the Big Island, then I said Hawaii, and it's Oahu that you're headed to. I know the islands. I know them. Yeah, have fun. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
See you then.